Well, hey, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Want to thank you for coming to our live show, Dog Wellness Revelations. And without any further ado, because we're starting just a bit late, want to apologize for that and thank you for staying with us. And thanks for being on live with us. Want to remind you before we go live with the show that you can ask your questions down below in the comments field on YouTube and Facebook. So right in there under the comments, under where you're watching, you can submit your questions. And if we have time, we'll get to them right on the show. So without further ado, let me introduce my wonderful co-host and compatriot here at Gussie's Gut, Dr. Ian Billinghurst.
Good morning, everybody, or good evening, and basically hello, and morning, Rob.
Good morning to you. Good morning. Well, let's get our guest on, shall we, Dr. B?
Let's do that.
All right, great. Well, we're so excited. I'm so pleasantly surprised whenever I meet somebody in a busy business that is lovely to chat with and interact with, and so I have such a person that we are going to have on the show today. She is one of the co-founders of WeFeedRaw.com, and they make an amazing product. And we want to talk about that product and their origin story. So Amy Zalneraitis is here on the show with us today. Hi, Amy.
Nice to see you. You almost got my last name right.
Amy Zalneraitis. I know, because I'm not reading it. Amy Zalneraitis.
Zalneraitis. It's okay. It sounds like a disease. My sister used to say it was called, inflammation of the Zalner. But it's very hard to pronounce, so you're not the only one who's not pronounced it correctly.
Well, I just proved that I'm not reading anything, so I guess there's that's what you get for being live, everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So Amy Zalneraitis.
Zalneraitis.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, Amy, and I'll stick with Amy.
Yeah, you can stick with Amy. It's much easier. My parents were nice and giving me a short first name.
Well, we're very excited to have you, and we've done some homework on your company, and that's the reason we invited you. We're thrilled to find these great companies that have such high quality in a very difficult space. It's a difficult business to be in, creating safe, healthy, raw food. So what I thought would be really interesting, and I know Dr. B is going to be very interested in this story. He and I haven't talked about this, but let's talk a little bit about how WeFeedRaw.com came to be, your origin story.
Sure. I'm so happy to be here today. And again, Dr. Billinghurst, just an honor to meet you. Your book, Give Your Dog a Bone, was one of, if not the first books I read on raw feeding. I think most raw feeders or people in this business have it on their bookshelf. So you are just such a pioneer in this field, and you've done so much for the movement. So we're all indebted to you. It's not an easy business, but you've made it somewhat easier, paved the way. So We Feed Raw was actually founded by my sister, Alyssa. Alyssa was a devout dog lover from childhood. We were raised by parents who were always rescuing animals. So treating animals well was not only instilled in us from a young age, it's also, I think, part of our DNA. So my sister grew up to be a big rescuer of dogs herself. At one point, I think she had 10 rescues. So we called her house home to the world's friendliest wolf pack. And so she just started researching raw feeding and became a DIY raw feeder, and immediately saw the benefits of switching her dogs, her rescues, from a highly processed kibble diet to a biologically appropriate raw one. And once she really got, making the meals down, she started making meals for her friends' dogs, and then friends of friends' dogs. And the business just grew organically from there. Her fiance, this is around 2009, and Alyssa's fiance, Rich, was also a co-founder. He was a former chef, so he was really good at making the actual food and, sourcing the ingredients. And my sister kind of handled the business side of things, and together they were this really awesome team. And they delivered fresh, raw meals door to door in Austin, Texas, where they lived. And they had this really nice growing business for about 4 years. And in 2013, the business was still small, but it was doing really well. But at the same time, my sister was given a shocking diagnosis, which was stage 4 terminal cancer at 35 years old. So this was obviously gutting news to all of us, and my family and I rallied together to move Alyssa, the business, Rich, and all the dogs to Maine to be closer to us because we were all on the East Coast at the time. So at that point, the company transitioned from this small, Austin business to a company that was now manufacturing in Maine and shipping nationwide. So that move in and of itself, as you can imagine, helped to grow the company exponentially. They're that now have a much bigger customer base. So on December 23rd of 2014, a little over a year after Alyssa's diagnosis, she passed away after an incredibly brave fight. Her love for dogs and her passion for this business never wavered. She worked on this business up until the last week of her life, until she physically could not anymore. So immediately after her death, despite being in the most acute stages of grief, my family and I came together again to keep the business alive because it was my sister's vision and it was, her legacy, and we just knew we couldn't let it die. So there was really no pause in the business. People were relying on this food for their dogs. Shipments had to go out, orders had to be processed. So my dad, Bruce, came out of retirement to run operations and financials. Rich, Alyssa's fiance, continued to run production, manage a crew, work a very labor-intensive schedule, getting up at 4 a.m, still making the food, packing the boxes. And I really focused on developing the brand, growing the business, and securing outside funding, while also simultaneously working a full-time job in New York City. So we ran this business like this for quite some time. My dad and Rich really holding down the fort, and me back in New York City, developing the brand, the customer experience, growing the customer base. At this time, most notably, I also spearheaded a rebrand of the company. So up until this point, we'd always been seen as just like a supplier of raw. We were never really a brand. And I really thought, my background is in creative. I'm a creative and I've worked in marketing and branding. I really thought we needed a cohesive brand to, convey our philosophy and our values, and to also reflect the amazingness of our product, So in March of 2018, we completed that rebrand. And to this day, after our product, I have to say, it's one of our biggest assets. There's not a lot of great branding in pet food. It's getting better, but especially in raw pet food. So I think that we have this modern, fresh, clever, smart brand that resonates with the millennial demographic, not just them, but particularly them. And they happen to be the largest pet owning demographic. So it's worked out pretty well for us. It's also, given us credibility in the marketplace, which has helped to, for us to expand. In 2019, my husband Chauncey came on to run operations and financials so that my dad could finally retire. So we continued to keep it in the family. We also brought on a PhD nutritionist, partnered with a co-packer and an HPP facility. And last year in 2021, we completed another capital raise, which has helped us grow more than we've ever grown. So just to give you an idea, in 2021, we delivered around 624,000 pounds of food, and we expect to deliver 1 million in 2022. So that brings us to today, where we're currently in the process of expanding to multiple facilities around the country. And this move, by increasing our distribution network, we're able to service 98% of the contiguous US with 1 and 2 day transit times. So this means faster time to the customer. We can really hone in on the frequency of the food so that customers always have the right amount of food. We can get into this, but we're a meal kit delivery service. So, everything is customized for the dog so that, they're feeding, once you run out of food from the previous box, the other box shows up just in time. And that's where we are today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, indeed. I just love the fact that you've grown from a small family business and it's grown organically.
Yeah.
I think that is so brilliant. You
Yeah.
haven't tried to be big. All you were doing was setting out to do something good. And from that, something good grew. My heart just sinks for your sister. That's just, and for you all and your sister. But somehow out of that grief and tragedy has sprung this wonderful company. So congratulations from me, very deeply and sincerely.
Thank you. And I do think that it's been cathartic for us all as a family to have this, to in a lot of ways it is her, continuing on. And, I feel her around all the time. And I know that she would be completely proud of where the company is today. This, like you were saying, Dr. Billinghurst, this was born out of, a dedication to the well-being of animals and the desire to feed those animals the healthiest diet possible. That's it. It wasn't like a get rich quick, how to go to business school and figure out pet food's lucrative. It was born out of just wanting to treat animals well and feed them well. So I think that's carried us through, and I think that comes through to the customer, and that's why we've been able to be successful and will continue to be successful. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, you're certainly not getting rich quick in the raw food business.
No, and it's not for the faint of heart, and it's hard.
No.
Yeah. Shipping raw.
I'm really loving the fact that you've dispersed your business around the country, because that means, and I'm just making an assumption here, that you're sourcing local to feed local.
Yes, so everything is sourced in the USA from farms we trust. We do source our lamb and venison from New Zealand, all grass-fed, pasture-raised, very high quality, human grade. But yeah, besides the lamb and venison, everything is sourced in the USA. We manufacture our food out of the middle of the country, and then we will ship it to these the fulfillment centers around the country. So that, it's tough now because we still have 3-day transit times, right? Which is fine in the winter, but when you get to these hotter ones, it's like, if you don't get it there, right on that third day, if it's even 5 hours later, you can have thawed packages. So it's tricky. It's really tricky.
I love the fact you've got lamb and venison from New Zealand, because that is such a beautiful, clean, green country.
Yes.
And their produce is just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Probably one of those little gems in the world, New Zealand.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Yeah, we really pride ourselves on the quality of our food. It's always been and will continue to be our top priority, along with safety. So yes, I don't know if we've talked about this, Rob, in the past, but when we first spoke, but our recipes are, I guess, inspired by, based on the prey model raw diet. So we don't have the actual bones on the side of the prey, but it's approximately 80% meaty meat, as the raw feeding world calls it, which is muscle meat and connective tissue and fat. 10% organ meat, all of which is secreting organ, half of which is liver, and then 10% fresh, finely ground bone. We do add high quality vitamin and mineral mix for full and proper nutrition, but it's a very small amount because all of those micronutrients occur naturally in our formulas. So, to say complete and balanced per AFCO standards, we, are being compliant. But yeah, we're very proud of the product that we create and the safety program we have in place. So yeah.
So do you make life stage formulas, Amy? I wasn't quite sure from your website just exactly how it functioned, but do you make life stage formulas, or is it sort of one basic formula? How do you work this?
So our formula, we've worked with a PhD nutritionist to ensure that this is complete and balanced for all life stages, including the growth of large breed puppies, 70 pounds or more, fully grown. So yeah, we don't do specific puppy formulas or adult formulas. They're all for all life stages.
And can you tell me about the sort of things that people tell you about your product? Because you must get people contacting you and talking to you about your product.
I mean, one of our big, I would say another big, you know, asset is our customer service is top notch, and it always has been. We're very hands-on with our customers, whether, you know, they want to chat us, text us, call us, email us. We're really trying to make ourselves available to them, especially during the transition phase to raw, because you know, I think people start out feeding raw from a place of fear, you know, because of veterinarians and because of what they hear. There's just like so much fear mongering around raw. So it's tough when people don't have the tolerance for the transition, because it's like, you know, I always compare it to like a human switching from eating a highly processed, like, you know, junk food diet, and then you start eating like whole foods. You're going to understand that, you know, you might have some digestive upset for a few days, right? But for some reason, it's not applied to dogs. It's like they're having loose stools, or like, you know, they're, you know, constipated, or, you know, it's like there's, and then immediately there must be something wrong with the food. And of course, if they take the dog to the vet when they're having these symptoms and the vet isn't pro raw, which we know often happens, they just get scared off. So there's still a lot of education that needs to happen with the transition process. But most of the time, to get back to your question on what people say about our food, it's overwhelmingly positive. People cannot believe what a biologically appropriate diet can do to a dog's quality of life. I mean, it's, and I think why the raw feeding movement has grown so much by word of mouth is because it's like so awesome when you see it happen that you just want to share it with other people. It's like you want to tell your brother, you want to go to the dog park and talk to other people and be like, you have to try this, it's amazing. Like, you know, my dog doesn't have allergies anymore, or they've, you know, slimmed down to their ideal weight, or, you know, their digestion is so much better. So it's really a cool thing to see happen, and I think that people love to share that.
Do you have any? You're talking there about health problems. Do they talk about things like arthritis, diabetes, even cancer to you?
Yes. We, you know, have to be careful when people come to us with specific health conditions. We have to be careful to say we're not vets and we can't provide, you know, medical advice, but what we can tell you anecdotally is this is what we've seen, and this is how we've seen it. You know, we encourage you to try it for yourself, and most of them do, and most of them see an amazing result. It's like if your dog is overweight and suffering from diabetes because they're eating, you know, a carb heavy, starch laden, you know, diet that they're not meant to digest, and then you switch them to something they are designed to eat, the results are remarkable, you know? So, but I think that the challenge for most raw companies is the education factor and just the fear factor, and getting people over that hump. I think once it's like after the first week of feeding, and they start to see the benefits, it's like, okay, smooth sailing. But it's really that first, like, getting people to trust, like, are you sure raw food isn't going to hurt my dog? And like, you know, there's a lot of fear around raw meat and salmonella. And so I think it's just getting them over that hump that is a big obstacle.
What's your advice during the transition period?
So we have so when someone signs up, a new customer, whether they're on raw or not, because, you know, all raw formulas are different. We don't put fruits or veggies in our formula. A lot of people add them on their own, and we totally support it. We think it's amazing. But it's complete and balanced as is, so you don't have to add those things. But we just basically tell them, you know, like if they want to add fruits or veggies, like go ahead and do that. What was the question? Sorry.
Well, just whether you had any particular advice to people when they are transitioning, just any little aids or tips that might help them through this period.
Yes, sorry. So we tell them to transition over 10 days, and they're sent a box with a transition, with instructions on how to transition. And it includes, like, basically the basis of it is like feed 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%. By day 10, you should be feeding 100% raw. So it's a slowish introduction. Some dogs might need a longer transition. Some dogs, you know, you guys probably know that some dogs would do fine on a cold turkey switch, right? Some dogs might not need that, but most dogs will. And I think a lot of times it's more for the pet owner because there's less symptoms. The dog might be fine with having some loose stools. The dog might be fine with having a little constipation, but it's the owner that gets freaked out. So I think the transition is really for the owner too. I mean, of course, we don't want the dog in any sort of discomfort, but the transition is really for the owner too.
Absolutely. Rob, would you like to comment a little bit more on that transition period? Because I know you've had a bit of experience in that area.
Sure. Amy's right on. I mean, there's a richness to raw food. If you can just oversimplify it, there's a richness that you don't have when a dog is used to kibble. Let's just say kibble diets or even cooked diets. And so when they get something raw, it's like, when we maybe eat something that's a dessert that's rich, or a little too much indulgence in pastries or something, people get that too. So it's nothing to be feared, and it's very temporary.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate how you're like titrating people onto the diets. I think that's smart, and nobody wants to have any accidents in their home. Or really just see their dog going through it. They feel like their dog's in distress, but the truth is that it's super temporary and it's very common. And Dr. B talks all the time about it's really nothing to be feared or worried about.
Yeah, and we do tell them we offer whether it's plain canned organic pumpkin with nothing added, that can be helpful. I mean, even a Gussie's Gut product, a good probiotic, we do recommend those things as additions to help. And it's, every dog is different too. Again, some dogs will just do totally fine in the transition, and some dogs need a little bit more TLC. So we're there to help people with that. And that's something that we will continue to improve on as a company, is how do we help people in that transition phase be prepared for it going in, and then during it, like, be there for them. So, having raw feeding experts that they can call at our company and talk them through some of the issues. Because sometimes if you just get a, piece of paper with instructions on like what to expect, it doesn't have the same, feel as like actually talking to someone on the phone and being like, listen, this is normal. Like, this is what's happened. This has even happened to my own dog. So we're really trying to build a team that will be able to do that for our customers.
In my early days in the US, doing lectures to people, I met a lot of people who were raw feeders, and they would talk about something that we can't get in Australia, which was green tripe. And they said, and this was true of the English people too, they could get hold of green tripe, and they added that. And this made a big difference because,
yes.
And perhaps we didn't understand fully back then just the importance of the microbiome, but we knew the dogs that ate that would very quickly adjust. And what we're seeing, of course, was an adjustment to their microbiome, and that was brilliant. So actually, that was one of the reasons I became involved with Rob, because he was producing a product that tampered with the, if I can use that word, tampered or messed around with the microbiome in a very positive way. And I got enthusiastic for that because it's a big part of raw feeding. Of course, when you feed raw, you produce, you're actually going to change the microbiome. And if we can speed that up some way, and this was what Rob was producing, a product that would speed up this change with fermented veggies, I got quite excited. But I just thought that was that's a very interesting thing, this major problem that people have with swapping to raw, the fear. And fear is a big component, and that fear is compounded, of course, when their dog has digestive issues. Yeah. So anything we can do to eliminate that. And sometimes I've found in my experience that when you combine, say, dry food with raw food, you're really confusing the digestive system, particularly the stomach, and how it wants to deal with it. I've found for the vast majority of dogs will do better if we go bang straight into raw, but occasionally that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But if you can actually add some fermented food, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, and you know, the other thing I think we've covered a bunch of really good points here. You don't have to feed as much raw food as you do kibble. Any food that, whether it's kibble or otherwise, any food that has a bunch of additives, whether it's corn or you name it, you know, any fillers and all of that. Raw food is more nutrient dense, so you get to feed less of it. And the other thing that I think is so cool, you know, when I met Ian, it's going on 23 years ago. Ian was still in his practice and he was doing consultations, and I had my first puppy, and as an adult, and I was just, you know, I wanted to learn from the best and figure out how to do this raw food thing. And I just remember I went to the grocery store and I was buying whole turkeys, and I was trying to find gizzards and, you know, turkey hearts, and I was trying to match, you know, oh my gosh, this store doesn't have turkey hearts. Where am I going to get them? The organ meat was such a pain.
Yeah.
You know, so to get this organ meat from a company like yours, a company that, you know, puts it all together, it's so much easier, and so much easier than when I was starting, and frankly, up to the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, I just think it's great because people are now able to get much more of a balanced meal with, you know, and the ground bone is also amazing too, you know, to be able to put that in the food. So
yeah, I think that's one of the philosophy of We Feed Raw is raw feeding made easy. It's like, you know, it can, for the raw curious customer, it can feel like this massive undertaking, and we work to make it as easy as possible. We plan, we portion, we package, we deliver. All they do is thaw and feed. And, you know, I know this isn't to say you shouldn't try DIY raw feeding. I mean, we sometimes will see on our social ads, you know, this is much more expensive than like what I do myself, but we're also providing a service that takes a lot of labor. But, you know, a lot of people don't want to make raw themselves, you know, like they don't have the interest, the time, the resources, the space. So, I mean, we really want to, and all power to the people that are, you know, doing it themselves and love doing it. But there's plenty of people that don't. So we want to be an accessible option to them. I mean, I lived in New York City for 18 years. There's no way that I was going to be going to like the butcher over here to get, and then to like go home and meal prep in my tiny apartment. Like they're just, so we really want to make raw feeding accessible to a larger group of people that, you know, just want the convenience of it. They don't have any interest in learning how to make complete and balanced raw meals themselves. They just want the assurance that it's done for them and it shows up at their door and they're feeding their dog correctly.
Yeah,
that's fulfilling a huge need out there, Amy. The fact that because dry food made feeding convenient, and convenience is the big thing. So if you can provide a food that is convenient, that it just arrives and all they got to do is feed it.
Yes.
That is absolutely brilliant. And you're right, there are some people who absolutely want to make it. I happen to be one of them because I'm still making my own.
Yeah. Well,
food for my dog.
he grinds it and everything.
Wow, you grind it?
I grind it. I've got a commercial grinder, and I've only got one dog and one cat these days, but it's a point of pride, I guess. And also I can mess around and experiment as being an inveterate experimenter.
Right.
My wife hates it when I do that with the cooking for home, but it's okay for the dog and cat.
Well,
But you are providing a brilliant service, and right across the country, which is fabulous.
Yeah, it's great, and I think it's really what we've noticed is, you know, when my sister first started this company, she was really operating within a hardcore raw feeding movement, right? 2009. I don't want to say like people who are feeding raw were on the margins of society, but they kind of were, you know. I mean, no, and we're so grateful for them. Those are the people that thought outside the box, that were like, you know what? No, I'm not going to listen to like what this vet is telling me is the only way to feed. Something isn't sitting right with me, like that feeding my dog was dry food with a shelf life of like, you know, 5 years. Like, so those people were the first customers of this company. but that hardcore, mentality also, sort of, this business started out as like with a very sort of severe draconian way of approaching raw feeding, which is like, if you don't feed 100% raw, like don't bother at all. And there's like nothing. And we've definitely softened our approach, because it's like, you're not going to get raw into as many dogs' bowls with that approach, right? People have different needs. Some people can't afford to feed 100% raw. Some people don't want to feed 100% raw. So we've really softened our approach and, tried to open it up to people, different people's budgets and lifestyles. So we have meal plans you can sign up for, to feed 25% raw, 50% raw, 75% raw, 100% raw. As long as, we're getting raw, some fresh raw into dogs' bowls, we're happy. We're achieving our goal. Of course, we think 100% raw is the best way, but again, that's just not going to get raw into as many dogs' bowls as possible. So
what would you say the percentage of customers that you have are coming to you with issues? So their dog is, let's just say, sick.
Yeah.
And they, for whatever reason, they've found raw. They've come to raw, and then they found their way with you. What would you, just as a bulk, I know you don't have these stats, I'm sure, in front of you.
Gosh, I would have to say it used to be a lot more, because I think people were finding raw out at, like, in the deep dark edges of the internet. Like, it wasn't in the mainstream. And like now, of course, we still get that, but I think we're getting, the biggest customer is what we call the raw curious customer. The person who, like, this idea, this way of feeding, it clicks. It makes intuitive sense to a lot of people. If you explain it to them, if you take time to like explain to people, okay, see this bag of dry food over here packed with like, and this fresh, like, they're like, and dogs, have a raw, this is their evolutionary diet. Like, it really makes sense to most people. So I think we have, the biggest category is the raw curious customer, the person who is like, okay, this makes sense to me. I don't really know what it means, like but just show me what to do. But of course, we still get the people that come to us and are like, I've been to the vet like this many times, and I've tried this steroid and this medication and nothing's working, and like, they found us that way. So we have the people that have like new puppies and they want to do the best for their dogs. The dog is like their new, and then we have, older senior dogs who are just struggling, and the owner wants to try everything they can at the end of their lives. And then we have this like raw curious customer who is I think the biggest category. And they tend to be like, I don't want to say some customers are easier than others, but they tend to be the easiest customer, because the hardcore raw feeding customer, well, we're so grateful for them, and they helped bring this company into existence. They can sometimes be a little bit difficult.
Well, it's the nerds, right? The nerds of the subject, and I say that affectionately. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
But they're analyzing every single thing, and and they're tweaking all the time.
Yeah. And they take up a lot. And we're happy to work with them, and we're very transparent, and we're always like, whatever. Like, did you change the bone? Like, how the bones seem a little bit more thick this time than like, and we're like, no, still grinding them the same way. But, and I think it's cool. I think that the type of person that feeds raw, the type of pet parent that feeds raw, they're some of the best pet parents out there, right?
Yeah.
Because they care, and they want to do more for their dogs. They're treating pets like family members, and they want their dogs to thrive and not just survive. So I really love this job, because, I feel like I'm among my people. It's like, like everyone, I can talk to people like you, and like our whole team at We Feed Raw, we're all dog lovers. The customers are dog lovers. It's like really an awesome, positive environment.
It's a great place to be in.
Yeah, we're
just wondering. Sorry, Rob.
I'm just saying, we're in service to dogs. It's the most amazing. It's hard work, but it's the most amazing, customer you can ask for, I think.
Yes, for sure.
And I'm wondering, do you have any handle on people start off maybe 25% raw, the rest kibble?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see them switching over time to more and more raw?
So, we're still gathering data on this, because this is relatively new change in our business. We used to only, so we create meal plans for dogs and we offer seven different recipes: chicken, duck, venison, lamb, beef. Am I missing one? I feel like I'm missing one. Turkey. And so people can choose whatever recipes they want, the variety that they want. And so we just, right now I can say that the biggest category is, most people are feeding 100% raw on our site that order from our site. The second biggest category is 50% raw. So it might just be like, because mathematically that's easier to figure out, like 25% raw is kind of like, well, what does that mean in a bowl? So it's like, you can feed like 100% raw or half raw. But I don't know. I can't answer yet, Dr. Billinghurst, if those people that are choosing 25% are overall then deciding to switch to a larger percentage of raw. Like, we just don't have that data yet from our own customers. We're hoping that would be the case, right? Like, you start to see that this is really benefiting your dog, and it's like, a gateway to but I just don't have that data yet from our own customers.
Do you get any feedback from veterinarians, either positive or negative, about your product and the results of animals that are eating it?
Is there any more incendiary topic than raw and vets? And I feel like I've been talking. So I do want to say that we are not anti-vet. I do believe that vets want the best for our dogs and our pets.
Absolutely, they do. Yep.
There's no you see all these things on social media that they're trying to make dogs sick so that they can make a profit. We don't believe in any of that. I just think that the system is what's flawed, and the way in which they were educated about nutrition, not anything else.
Yes, that's right.
Vets, but like the nutrition portion of it is flawed, right? They're not getting the full story. You're learning from kibble-funded studies, and they don't get the education about raw. So what I would say is that, and I think Dr. Patton, actually, Dr. Richard Patton, I know you guys, he's a, big animal nutritionist. Recently, we posted a quote from him, and it was, I'll paraphrase, but, he said, clinicians who are pushing raw as dangerous and kibble as the only safe option are outdated and ill-informed and working with, biased information. And I think that's that post did so well, because it just really is true. We work with conventional vets. We work with, holistic vets. Obviously, more holistic vets are pro raw, but the tide is slightly changing. We are seeing, vets not necessarily being pro raw or like recommending it, but not, chastising their clients when they see them feeding raw, which, 5 or 8 years ago, that's what would happen a lot. I think that there's a softening, in Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib's book, The Forever Dog, she says it well. I think, like, if vets don't start to adjust their way of thinking to meet what their clients want, it's going to hurt their business. I mean, there has to be, the consumers are driving this trend. Pet parents, like, the train has left the station. Raw is here to stay. It's gaining momentum. People are seeing it with their own eyes. So I think that there will be a change. I don't think it's going to be fast coming from like necessarily the conventional vet community. There's a lot of work being done to, I think, place fear in people's minds about raw. But I think that we could, I just wish that we could work better. I think that the raw companies want to work with the vets.
Yes.
The vets might be, there's some that are great, again, that are open-minded and saying, like, we have clients that come to us and say, listen, my vet has said to me, like, I just don't know about raw enough. I'm not saying don't do it, but here's the things that I would ask, like, is it complete and balanced? Do they have a nutritionist on staff? Does it meet AAFCO standards? And like, that's great to me, because it's like, okay, so at least the vet is saying, go back to the company and ask them these things. And if they meet them, then like, we can work with you. But to just turn them away completely and tell them all raw is bad, I think is really unfair to the client. They're not giving their client the, fair information. So that's my opinion.
Well, this is exactly how I, I learned about raw. I mean, my idea of health was very different when I got my first puppy. He had really severe issues, itching, horrible, severe issues. And I went to 4 vets, and at the 4th vet literally told me, I mean, this is like an 11-week-old puppy that he'd have to be on steroids the rest of his life. Now, I didn't know anything at the time really about steroids or drugs or any of that, but I knew intuitively that wasn't the answer. So I sought out other options. That vet threw me right into the arms of Ian Williams, and so and that whole world was opened up to me. All of my friends thought I was crazy, throwing a carcass on the floor that it would, he'd take out of the bowl and he'd fling around, and there's, all that stuff. I mean, whole half, it's quarter and then half turkey carcasses I was giving him often. But the other thing too is like, we can teach our veterinarians, I still do this.
Yes.
I recently I had a senior dog, and I was giving him IV pushes of glutathione and Myers cocktail and all these great nutrients. And I was going, too far to drive to do this on a regular basis. So I sought out right around the corner a vet for me. And I said, hey, would you be open to doing this? She had no idea how to do it. And I said, look, this would be great to do for your clients. Let me plug you. And my other vet knew what I was, it was inconvenient to keep going there and doing this. And, there was a port I had to put in them. And, just practically speaking, it was better if I did it around the corner. So my vet taught the other vet and shared the suppliers. And it's just, bring people together and have them open up a conversation. And I said, look, not only would you do some real good for these clients that need it, you'll also have another revenue stream. It's another reason for your clients to come into your office. It makes complete sense. So we can be a bridge, customers can be a bridge to the veterinary industry.
Yeah. I think the more that, clients show up with their healthy dogs that are thriving on this food and not dying a horrible death of like stuff, whatever the vets are taught that is going to happen to dogs. I think that will help. I mean, I remember I had an English bulldog she lived until she was 12 years old, which is very long for an English bulldog. I mean, their life expectancy is like 8. She ate raw her entire life. When I would first bring her to the vet, they were horrified that she was eating raw. And, well, is it just raw hamburger meat from the grocery store? Like there was just like no knowledge of even what. And then over the years, I mean, they would literally say, this is the healthiest bulldog we have ever seen. She didn't have any of the breed specific conditions. She had no allergies. She was a perfect weight. She was active. It's like, I mean, amazing. There has to be something happening that like, okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that we can work together with vets. There's amazing vets out there. I understand that, they do see the other side of it. They see people coming in with like, that are just feeding ground hamburger meat, right? Like they see the bad side to raw. So we have to sort of give them credit there, but I do think that if they could be more open-minded, that would help a lot. And I do think that I'm seeing that from what our clients are telling us when they go to their own vets. I'm seeing that more happen. So it's definitely a long way away, but it's happening.
Well,
that is great. It really is. I'm listening to your talk because it's really important what you're saying here, that people who feed raw, who have healthy dogs, they need to be encouraged to go to their vets and have regular checkups, actually spend the money, which they're going to spend now to help educate vets. Because the other thing we need to do is get a database of normal parameters, blood parameters for raw fed dogs, because it's different to kibble fed dogs. And this needs to become part of the veterinary mind, that this is different, that they do have different blood parameters, and let them correlate those blood parameters with the health of these dogs. instead of correlating with sickness all the time, and
Yeah.
let them correlate raw with health. We will change them very gradually. And this was one of the earliest things I said to people in my lectures. Please continue to go to your vets so that we can educate them. And so what you're talking about there is a really important thing.
Yeah.
So as you talk to your customers,
Yeah.
encourage them to do that. And it's important anyway to have a database for your dog,
Yeah.
a starting point of those blood parameters. So if there are any changes, they can be monitored. So all of that's important, that we keep in with our vets, we educate our vets, but we also do the right thing by our dog by keeping a chart of what's happening in their bodies. All important.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Have that baseline of their
Yes.
health is really important. Real quick, I'll just mention Amy was kind enough to set up a discount code for anybody who sees this and wants to just start on at We Feed Raw on their first order, 20% off. We don't get paid a single dime. We just made it an easy discount code for you, Gussie20,
Yep.
when you check out. And so thank you for that, Amy. It's very nice of people who are watching this. And I want to get to a question, which is a really good one. It's a little bit off of this topic of that we're just going into, which was, the days when I remember back when I started Raw, where they would tell you that never start a sick dog on Raw ever. Mm-hmm. And the fear was, this is too much to handle this, and it was back in that, that idea that there was too much to deal with, or there could be bacteria. It was all that fear around it. And so it's nice to see people I'm in plenty of groups on Facebook, for example, and you see people that they have, it sparked their interest that their dogs, they don't know where to turn. Their dogs aren't well. And so they're going into Raw and things are turning around for them. But this is, Ian, you'll notice is we're in this somewhat new field of fermented. I'm going to field this question to you, Ian, from Leroy Brown. Leroy, I remember from last or two live streams ago, Leroy is the name of the dog. So hi, Leroy. That's the picture of Leroy, I think. So thank you, Leroy Brown, for asking the question. I have read recently that fermented foods should only be given to healthy dogs, and even then, it should be done carefully. Fermented foods feed yeast, ? And histamines that can cause issues. So I have a little reply, but I'm going to let you take that first question, Ian.
Well, with anything new, it's always, particularly something like fermented foods, it's probably a very good idea to start small. And we do know that immune compromised animals that are given overwhelming levels of fermented foods, very rich in high levels of probiotics, can actually develop infections. And so that's no surprise, because we're overwhelming them with a bacteria that the body is not used to. So the answer is start small. And yes, they can produce histamines, but when fed in the context of a raw diet and a properly balanced raw diet, those histamines are generally dealt with. That's not a problem unless you have an animal that is specifically histamine sensitive. So I hand it back to you, Rob.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we always start a conversation like this by saying that, always look to your vet. And if you have a relationship with a holistic vet, fantastic. Bring them into the conversation. Don't go it alone. If you have a dog that isn't well, whatever that may be, consult that veterinarian. I think the amounts we're talking about are small and they're additive. What they're designed to be, we don't want you to feed, cups of our fermented powder because it's so concentrated. We're talking teaspoons. So, we talk about a teaspoon serving per every 10 to 20 pounds. And thank you, Amy, for being so patient with this question. I just wanted to answer this. And so what we're talking about is it being additive, and these are easier vegetables to digest actually because they've been fermented. And the microbes in them, even the best microbes, even the best probiotics that you give, if you give them to the wrong animal that's really sick or not able to deal with them, you're going to have some symptoms, whether they be a histamine effect or, a diarrhea effect. We don't see it yet. We haven't received any of those questions or issues. I think the people coming to us are not having to deal with those issues yet, but it's a great question. It's a question I really wanted to address, so I'm so glad that you asked it. I would just say it's very simple. If you have a very, very sick dog, please work with your veterinarian very closely. Bring them our package, bring them our label, show them your phone with our ingredients. And, if they say, great, introduce it slowly, fantastic. And if they say don't, then this might not be for you right now. Maybe another diet is. So I think that's it. I think we addressed it. We're getting a lot of other questions, Amy. No, sorry, a lot of other comments that I'm not going to put up on the screen, but people are, I know these are people that aren't your people because I've seen them on many of our live streams. They're just like, you are correct, Amy. Good, great. Great comments. Some raw feeding is made too difficult at times. Here's a quick question for you. Do you have any tips? Here we go from Tina Austin. Mm-hmm. Any tips for a small dog that does not like raw food? I love this question. Thanks, Tina.
It's so funny, the small dog, big dog thing, because we've had to do a lot of education with our customers too. Like, well, can my Chihuahua eat this too? And we really wanted to start changing our advertising to show more of these small dogs, because small dogs can thrive on raw food just like big dogs can too. So my tips would be the same for a small dog that doesn't like raw food as it would be for a big dog that doesn't like raw food. What we suggest is, one of the first things we suggest is to gently sear the food. And I mean gently sear, don't cook, but just warm it up, because a lot of dogs, if they're used to, especially eating, kibble or even another cooked pre-made brand or home cooked, they're not used to the cold temperature, and it can turn them off. So we suggest searing it or at least serving at room temperature. There's also some really tasty toppers that you can add. Some of the ones that we like to suggest are canned sardines and water. Pumpkin can be good. Goat milk is a great one. Gussie's gut probably is another. But there's tons of enticing toppers. And another thing that I think is really important is a little bit of tough love. And this is the hardest step for a lot of pet parents to take, because dogs will not starve themselves if you provide them with food. They won't. It's not like cats. You have to be a little bit more careful, but with dogs, you have to remember that you're not depriving them of food. You're providing them with food, and they're denying the food that you're offering them. So we've found, this is funny, we have a new employee at We Feed Raw who just started in our tech department, and he just started feeding his dog raw. His dog was on kibble before, and he presented the raw to his dog, and then the dog was like, no, I don't know what this is. On a food strike, and he's like, gosh, this sucks. But he stayed strong, and after I think a few days, the dog started eating, and now his dog absolutely loves it and whines at mealtime, and they can't get enough of it. So the tough love approach is really helpful. I know that there's, and I would defer to you, Dr. Billinghurst, on smaller dogs, if there's any sort of you have to be a little bit more careful with how long they go on food strike. But I think what we say is put the food down and walk away. Don't hover or act concerned. The dog will, notice these behaviors and be like, feel suspicious. And if they don't eat it after 15 minutes, pick it up and put it away, and then try again at next meal time. And then keep doing that until they're hungry enough to eat it.
That's the key. With everything else you do, two simple words: hunger helps.
Yeah.
Most important. And yes, sear it, mix it with something they absolutely love, but combine it fairly closely. All those things that you've mentioned, they will eat it.
Yeah.
The other one, of course, is the word patience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to be patient.
The other thing that you
actually believe it's important.
You brought up a really good point of temperature and
temperature, yes.
Yeah, I think I learned that from you, Ian. I mean, it just from the beginning, I remember I would set my meat out a little bit. Just, I'd go for a walk with him. My dog, I'd come back and it was, more room temperature. But you can also just boil if you're in a pinch. I've been in that position too. Just boil some water if you want. Throw it in the cold and mix it up a little bit. You're not really cooking it. You're not even blanching it. You're just bringing it up in temperature, and it's the texture change that they like too.
Yes, exactly.
And they sometimes like it cold.
Yes, and sometimes they like it cold. I know it's really the individual dog, but it really comes down to the owner being willing to try some different things, have patience and persistence, and know that you're not starving your dog. It's hard. It's like, oh my gosh, my dog's not eating. It's been, I think, who's Amy Marshall, who has that great blog, Primal Pooch. She writes about this on her blog, and she said that I think she had a dog that she knows about that went 10 days. That's the longest that she knows. Wow. And finally, he gave in. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think if you can stick it out and it can be tough, they will eat it. And most of the time end up loving it and thriving on it. So, yeah.
Let me say this too, Amy. If you have a small dog who's been on kibble, so they're going to be very sugar sensitive. They've had a lot of sugar all their life, so they're continually raising their insulin. So they really then get hypoglycemic. Start off with some cooked meat. Just cook it. They will eat that.
Yeah.
Increase your cooked meat, because then you're decreasing the sugar in the diet, and it can just be straight cooked meat for a little while.
Yeah.
Then gradually cook it less. Now you're actually tuning the body to not produce these sugar surges.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another thing that you have to remember. These meals don't have to be always this complete and balanced diet. And certainly when you're transitioning, that's a really healthy way to go. So just have to be creative, understand a little bit of physiology, particularly the sugar and insulin thing, which are the two things that are actually killing our dogs, sugar and insulin between them. Both of them, the insulin and the sugar, between them produce these glycated end products, and also inflammation in the body. And they're the things that are, they're major. Well, not the only things, but very major. But yeah, just get them to eat raw. And whatever you could do, whether it's hunger, you must use your patience. For over the years, I've noticed that people who said my dogs won't eat raw, they just won't. Then their dog gets sick, and then suddenly they learn that this might be helped by raw, and very suddenly their dogs will eat raw because they were prepared to have a little bit of patience.
Yeah.
Well, we have a hard stop time for Ian today, but Amy, this has been a really fun episode and opportunity to get to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been really great. Thank you guys so much for having me, and it's been awesome.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences. Those are the best. They are gems, because that's real life.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep. And thank you for being, a part of the whole food movement, because the problems we have with our dogs are pretty much the same problems we have with people.
Yeah.
And their health issues and their food and their diet, but making, being a part of, we break it down into paleo and raw and all that, but it's really just good quality, whole food, real food. Yeah. And, and for those people who want to make it on their own, wonderful. And for those people that want to have it done for them, and, I know a lot of people who do not want to handle meat.
Yeah.
They want to open a package, scrape it out with a spoon, and they're making a face the whole time. But they know this is what I know. A lot of vegans that do this.
We have a ton of vegan and vegetarian clients. Yep.
And so they don't want to deal with meat, and bless their hearts, they're doing it for their dogs. So thank you for making it easy for those folks.
Yeah, and it's good to every day I'm inspired by my sister. Her dedication to animals, and it makes me want to make this company the best it can be. And I'm also inspired by the whole raw feeding movement. And it's an awesome movement. People are just really courageous and doing what they know is right for dogs, even when a lot of the mainstream is sometimes saying something else. So Yeah, you have to stick together.
That's right. That's right. Well, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us so much on the live stream today, and have a great day.
Okay, bye.
Indeed. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.